Thomas puffed as fast as he could. The ruined castle had tall turrets and a great big door. The old kings and queens of Sodor used to live there. You could make up a jolly good story about kings and queens, puffed Thomas happily. But on his way there, Thomas saw Emily in a siding. She was looking sad. She was taking flour to the bakery, but her whistle had broken. It wasn't safe to work without it. "I'm sorry," puffed Thomas to the famous storyteller. "I cannot take you to the ruined castle. I have to help my friend." So Thomas buffered up to Emily and took her to the bakery. "Thank you, Thomas," cried Emily. Thomas arrived at the bakery just in time. Emily was pleased, and Thomas puffed away. "Misty Valley is not far from here," chuffed Thomas. "Now I will take you there." He had heard Misty Valley was full of magic. "You could make up a jolly good story about magic," puffed Thomas. But on his way, Thomas saw Percy. Percy was in trouble. A river had flooded its banks. Percy was up to his buffers in water, and his firebox had gone out. "I am sorry," whistled Thomas to the famous storyteller. "I cannot take you to Misty Valley. I have to help my friend." Slowly, Thomas chuffed into the water. The water came right up to his footplate. The famous storyteller had to stand on a box of cookies to keep her feet dry. Thomas bravely buffered up to Percy, and he pushed his friend out. "Thank you, Thomas," cried Percy. By now, it was time to go to the grand opening, and Thomas was late. "Cinders and ashes," wheezed Thomas. "I haven't had time to show any sights at all." Thomas arrived at the new library station. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. "We didn't visit any sights," puffed Thomas sadly. "I had to take James's passengers to Maithwaite Station, Emily's flour to the bakery, and pull Percy out of the water." "But it's a wonderful idea for a story," cried the famous storyteller. "I shall write all about your day, Thomas, and how you helped your friends." She was very excited, and Thomas was delighted. The famous storyteller cut the red ribbon in front of the new library. She declared it open. Then the children and the engines all listened as the famous storyteller told them the story of her wonderful adventures with Thomas and his friends on the magical island of Sodor. Someone new has arrived on Sodor. Here are some dots. If we join these dots, we'll see who it is. Can you guess who it might be? Let's join the dots and find out. Off we go. Whoever this is, he has a pointed nose at the front and some small wheels underneath. There's something long and pointed sticking out from one side. Do you know who this is yet? Here's a triangle-shaped tail at the back, and also something sticking out from the other side. They look like wings. Who can it be? That's right. It's Jeremy the plane. Welcome to Sodor, Jeremy.
There's always somewhere Freddy up the mountainside.
Or pay a trip to Sodor Bridge that spans our gorge with pride.
It's all a new experience, like Jeremy the Jet.
Watch him as he's flying by, one scene you won't forget. There's always somewhere new to go and something new to see. Things you never knew before, or somewhere new to be. Though you'll remember, dear old friends, some red, some green, some blue. For everything familiar, there's always something new.
You could see Neville on the track, or Rocky, he's a crane.
Here's Rosie, you don't see so much, so don't forget her name.
There's Dennis working in the yard,
And Molly may be met.
Our new friends on the island here, one scene you won't forget. There's always somewhere new to go and something new to see. Things you never knew before, or somewhere new to be. Though you'll remember, dear old friends, some red, some green, some blue. For everything familiar, there's always something new.
though you'll remember, dear old friends, some red, some green, some blue.
For everything familiar, there's always something new.
The island of Sodor is a wonderful place. There are lots and lots of engines. Who's that puffing along the track? It's Edward. Edward is a very fine engine. He is blue with red stripes and has the number 2 painted on his tender. He is often called Edward the Wise. Edward always listens carefully to the other engines, but one day he listened too carefully to Gordon. Rocky the Crane had arrived on Sodor. Rocky was strong and powerful, but he had no engine. Another engine had to pull him. Gordon called Rocky newfangled nonsense. He snorted that Rocky may be new, but he wasn't really useful. Edward always thought Gordon was right, so he agreed with him. Later, Edward had to pull flatbeds of heavy poles. Rocky offered to help, but Edward didn't want the help of newfangled nonsense. So he puffed off quickly, before the poles had been properly tied down. Edward was so busy thinking about Rocky that he didn't see the red signal in time. He screeched to a halt, and poles tumbled all over the track. Emily and Thomas couldn't puff through. Then Gordon steamed onto the poles and came off the track. It was a terrible mess. Luckily, Edward is a wise engine. He knew that he and Gordon had been wrong to say Rocky wasn't really useful, and now he knew he needed Rocky's help. Edward brought Rocky to the poles, and Rocky cleared the tracks in no time. Rocky and Edward became firm friends. Edward is everyone's friend. One day, Edward was chosen for a very special. He was to pull the Duke and Duchess's furniture to their summer house. Spencer was to take the Duke and Duchess. Gordon and James wanted Edward to race Spencer. Edward couldn't let his friends down, but Spencer was faster. He overtook Edward easily. Edward huffed and puffed his hardest. The Duke and Duchess stopped to take some photographs. Spencer was so far ahead in the race, he decided to have a rest. So Spencer snoozed, and Edward puffed. He puffed right past Sleepy Spencer and won the race. Edward felt so happy, his boiler bubbled. The other engines were very proud of Edward, and Edward was quite proud of himself. Edward is old, and Edward is wise. Wise enough to know that being a really useful engine is very important, and having really good friends makes every day on Sodor a happy day. Each engine on the island of Sodor looks different. Can you tell who is who? This engine is green. It has large wheels. In fact, the whole engine looks very large. There's a coal tender at the back. Do you know who it is yet? Here's another clue. On the side is a big yellow number 3. Have you guessed? It's Henry. Hello, Henry. This engine is a completely different shape. The wheels are covered. It has cow catchers on the front and on the back. And there are 2 small windows on each side. This engine is made of wood. And it has a big number 7 painted on the side. Who could it be? That's right, it's Toby. Hello, Toby. Now, do you know who this last engine is? This engine is smaller than Henry. It has flat water tanks on each side, painted in a beautiful bright blue, with bright red stripes. There are wheel arches at the front, and a tall black funnel, and a big yellow number 1. Who is number 1 on Sir Topham Hatt's railway? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Thomas, Toby, and Henry all look very different, but they're all really useful engines. Emily and the Garbage. Emily is a grand green engine. She's very proud of her big wheels and her perfect polished paintwork. One morning, Emily was very excited. Sir Topham Hatt had told her to work with a new engine. I hope he's smart and useful, she wished. Emily met Thomas waiting at a signal. The new engine is waiting for you at the shunting yards, tooted Thomas. I can't wait to meet him, puffed Emily, and she chuffed away as fast as her boiler could bubble. Emily steamed into the shunting yards to look for the new engine. He was the dirtiest little engine she had ever seen. Hello, Emily, wished the new engine happily. My name's Whiff, because I'm a bit smelly. You're going to help me collect garbage. Emily was horrified. Oh, come on then, she sighed. Let's get started. Gordon was talking to James and Henry in a siding. When they saw Emily with Whiff, they laughed. Hello, whistled Whiff. Who's your smelly new friend with the funny whistle, Emily, snorted James. We smelt you coming for miles, wished Gordon grandly. My name's Whiff, whistled Whiff. It suits you, laughed Henry. Phew. Emily was very embarrassed. She hurried away. Whiff puffed after her. Phew. Up the line, Emily and Whiff passed more engines. When they saw Whiff, they all laughed too. Emily was tired of being teased. I must get away from Whiff, she huffed. Emily pumped her pistons. Wait for me, whistled Whiff. But Emily wasn't going to wait for Whiff, and soon Whiff was a long way behind. Emily was glad Whiff had gone. It's not my fault he can't keep up, she huffed. Later, Emily had to wait for Elizabeth at a crossing. Where's this new engine? Honked Elizabeth grandly. He got lost, wished Emily.
No, I didn't,
Whistled Whiff cheerfully.
Hello!
Oh, sniffed Elizabeth. Aren't you going to introduce me to your new friend? But Emily didn't want anything more to do with Whiff. She chuffed away as fast as her pistons would pump.
Wait for me!
Whistled Whiff cheerfully.